Hi, everyone. I'm Marte Aboagye. I'm the head of community engagement at Springtide Research Institute. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am delighted to be in conversation with the Trevor Project today, specifically with Penelope. And I'd love to have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and the work you do at the Trevor Project.
Yes, hello, peace, peace, everyone. My name is Penelope French. My pronouns are she, they, he, and I am a public training manager here at the Trevor Project. And so I focus on at the Trevor Project, making sure that we are educating as many people as we can on suicide prevention and risk detection, and also how to be an allyship with the LGBTQ community at the intersection of mental health. Me personally, in my free time, I love, love, love to sing. That's something I really enjoy doing, all different ways, musicals, live jam sessions, all of those different things. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen that you have extra presence online beyond the Trevor Project that's more of your music side. So that's really cool to hear.
Yes.
I am so honored to be talking with you guys because the Trevor Project is just known for having amazing reach in supporting LGBTQ plus young people. So as the world's largest suicide prevention and mental health organization for LGBTQ youth, can you highlight some of the support services, resources, and public education that you all offer?
Yes, yes. So we have our crisis prevention hotline, which is our 24/7 global hotline, right? That's always available. It's free and it's confidential. And that has been around for over 20 years. And now we're moving into a space where we also have two other iterations of that in text messaging and chat. So everyone can reach out and making sure that our programs are accessible to the youth when they need them. And, we love our phones. We take them with us. We tuck them in bed with us at nighttime. So we wanted to make sure, again, that we were accessible. We also focus on, through our research, which we'll hear more about in this conversation, I'm sure. But our research, we focus a lot on making sure that we actually are researching and getting the information that gives us knowledge about the mental health issues that are impacting LGBTQ youth. And we also do other research briefs that come out every so often, maybe monthly, every other month, that do touch on other topics and get a little bit more specific about, being LGBTQ in rural areas and small towns, or being autistic and LGBTQ in that intersection of mental health. And so those many different things where you all can absolutely find at the trevorproject.org/research to see more of that. And then our resources, we definitely have so many cool resources that are grounded in kind of telling the story and telling the lived experiences of our LGBTQ youth through the research lens that we actually have. And so that, and then our trainings, of course, we do have in our public education. If we are not training clinicians or, school districts or even our corporate partners, we're training as many nonprofits and connecting with our communities on the ground so that we're making sure that we have a more direct connection with the communities that we serve.
It's incredible. Your reach is so wide. I'm really glad you can mention some of those. And I'm glad you pointed to the research aspect because the Trevor Project is one of a very few organizations that are reaching young LGBTQ plus people on such a broad national, even global scale, like you said. So why is survey research such an important investment to make in the LGBTQ plus community? Do you see those, your research directly contributing to your advocacy efforts?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for asking this question, because this is a question that really makes me excited in the role that that I play at the Trevor Project. But specifically because it is absolutely important that we're investing in finding out the information and what is the truth and the realities of the youth that we want to engage, that we want to help. Oftentimes, because I also am in academia in many different ways. Oftentimes, we take this approach from research that's very much theorized around many different things based off of other research, and it's this continuous thing. But the best ways to know more about a specific group of people is to be inserted inside of that community, to be there and know the stories, to hear the experiences. And we absolutely get to do that from the perspective of not only our research, but also our advocacy and our public education, from being connected to those nonprofits on the ground, from making sure that we're being supportive and funding other organizations that align with our advocacy goals. And so it is so important to the work that we do, because if we don't know, then we don't know where to fill in the gaps. We
Yeah.
don't know how to change our services to make sure that they are also evolving at the same rate of the information and research that we're also getting. So it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, as a sociological research institute, we believe deeply in the power of research. But I think the fact that you all have services alongside research is extra pivotal, because so many organizations kind of do direct services or they do research. And
One
the
or
fact
the
that the
other,
Trevor
yeah.
Project is doing both and infusing them and in letting, one inform the other is really powerful. I I want to dig into some of those research findings specifically.
Yeah, let's
So,
do it.
um, Springtide has dedicated all of 2022 and even extending into 2023 on research focused entirely on mental health and Gen Z. And the research coming out of the Trevor Project's 2022 national survey on LGBTQ youth mental health has provided critical insights to put into conversation with our own research findings. And we know that your research is helping to equip a variety of youth serving organizations to advance policies and practices to better support LGBTQ youth. And that is our hope and intention as well. And we're seeing that a lot because Springtide's findings dug into the experiences of LGBTQ youth, specifically even looking at non-binary youth's experiences with our huge data, our national data set. So yeah, some findings, just a few to highlight from both organizations' 2022 research reports that cover LGBTQ youth and mental health. Some that I want to first highlight, you can find in this report right here, our report that released earlier in 2022 called Mental Health and Gen Z, What Educators Need to Know. In that research, we found that LGBTQ plus students spanning ages 13 to 25, so we're talking middle school through higher ed, are more likely to say they feel lonely at school than straight students. And only 47% of LGBTQ plus students say, I feel safe at my school sharing things about my life, compared to 61% of straight students who say they feel safe sharing things about their life at school. And so that's a significant disparity right there that
Yeah.
we want to see teachers and educators and trusted adults creating different type of environments in schools, so that LGBTQ plus students can also feel safe sharing things about their life with educators and those other trusted adults in school settings. So building off of those Springtide findings, the Trevor Project's research on LGBTQ youth found that there's that LGBTQ youth at school, that if the school was LGBTQ affirming, that they reported lower rates of attempting suicide. So I want to say that one more time. I feel like I want to make that clear. LGBTQ youth who found their school to be a place that was LGBTQ affirming reported lower rates of attempting suicide. That's major.
Mm.
So when a school is looking to be more mental health friendly, what does it look like? What does an LGBTQ affirming school look like? Are there specific practices that the Trevor Project would like to encourage schools to adopt to become more mental health friendly environments for all students with LGBTQ students in mind?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for bringing up that research and bringing it to light, because I think it's important to enter into the conversation. I also seen from that same research that you all, the number of 57% of young people say they experience trauma, right, in their spaces that they're, and think about how that translates to their everyday experience. And when we think about schools, this is the container that helps develop our youth. School is the place that they spend most of their time really figuring out who they want to be, what parts of their personalities, are they love, they don't like, all of these different elements. And so when we talk about a school that is a safe space for all children, but if we're focusing on all children, we have to start at the margins and the groups of people who are being impacted in different ways and emphasize that. I think pronouns is a practice that we all can agree has become more important over the years, and not specifically because of a lot of the propaganda around pronouns or just being more difficult and it's just extra work and those things like that, but it's more so centering around identity and giving our youth their autonomy back and developing that identity. And so pronouns are deeply connected to respect and how people are naming who they are for themselves, and everybody receiving that and leading with respect and encountering that, and instead of opinion. And if it becomes this thing, if it becomes a standard practice using pronouns in different ways, as in the ways that I introduce myself, hello, my name is Penelope, my pronouns are she, they, he, it gives a room and indicators that I can express myself here. This person and this space who is cultivating this space or leading this space is aware of the importance of the room that needs to be made so that I can show up my full self in this space. And you run into those risks of people talking about, well, what if everybody doesn't want their students don't want to participate and utilize in certain things? Standard practices don't have to be these things that are mandatory. I'm going to beat you over the head for you to understand it. It's actually an invitation, right? When you put these out, these are invitations that happen. Also, another part of school being safe, it's not just in pronouns, it's in also having the conversations and supporting support groups for LGBTQ and other groups inside of a school, to make sure that there's LGBTQ representation in the decisions that are being made for the students. So the school board should not be existing without LGBTQ presence there, just as much as every other people group, right, that is defined. It needs to be as diverse and reflective of the students that actually go to the schools that are there. And so that's how you infiltrate policy, right? Because we also understand that in education at times, aligned with the fact that this is the heteronormative standards of our society, we are still working through those in our education systems as well. And so oftentimes, if we are not putting people who have the lived experience and roles that are important to help make processes and policies and things like that, we oftentimes perpetuate the same things that we're trying to work against. And so it is important for representation to happen in safe school spaces, and making sure that there are times that are specifically carved out. And I'm a big fan of this. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of research around like naps and rest during like these days. I really believe that, practices that are beneficial for me, but through research also, but I seeing them in that space of when as education has developed from kindergarten to being a senior, right, in kindergarten, those younger age, you get those naps, you get those times to reset and repower yourself. And they were beneficial to how people were learning things, because we learn the most in our lives in those developmental years. And so re-implementing some of those things are also a way. And I'm gonna stop there because I know you got some more questions,
Oh
and this
no,
is gonna
those
come
were
up
good.
again.
Those were good. Letting pronouns be an invitation. I really like that language. Support groups for queer students, LGBTQ plus students in schools, representation in the decisions and policies that are being implemented, creating space for resetting and rest. These are good. This is good mental health friendly stuff in schools. Um, I I really want to pick up just on the pronouns piece, because we have a framework in our research called the Notice Named Known framework. It's a process of creating a sense of belonging for students. And so when I quoted the research we have about LGBTQ plus students feeling more lonely at school than straight students, issuing a practice of creating a sense of belonging can mitigate those experiences of loneliness. And with named being the second of that tier, notice, named, known, naming is huge. Honoring the names of students that they go by. Maybe it's not always what's on the roll call, but honoring the name of each student, of what they're asking to be known by, as well as their pronouns, already is major for creating a sense of belonging in a classroom or school environment. So yeah, I just want to re-emphasize that if people are more curious about what's the big deal about names and pronouns, look into this belongingness process as well, just for easy ways. We even have free resources on our website of ways that you can really individuate and honor who each student is and the identities that they carry. So look into those on springtideresearch.org with the belongingness challenge and more. Sorry, was I cutting you off with anything there?
No.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's talk about school counselors. When it comes to schools and school counselors, that's often, some of the recommendations for creating mental health friendly environments. And I don't disagree with that. Springtide doesn't disagree that school counselors can't be part of creating more mental health friendly environments. It can't end there as just like, well, we put more counselors in the school,
Right.
good to go.
Right.
So what about the training on the environment that school counselors have an opportunity to cultivate? That's what I want to dig into. Springtide found that LGBTQ plus students were more likely to hesitate seeing the school counselor because, quote, I was afraid I'd be judged, than straight students. So 32% of LGBTQ students were afraid they'd be judged, whereas straight students, only 24%, hesitated to see the school counselor for fear of being judged. Since school counselors are often seen as the support system when it comes to mental health needs in schools, but it's clear that not all students feel like that support is truly there for them. I'm wondering if you could speak to the role of school counselors for LGBTQ youth. Are there trainings? Just since you hinted at some of those resources that the Trevor Project offers, are there trainings that you all provide for schools and youth serving adults that you want to highlight?
Yes. So this is also a great topic with talking about counselors. So we, as the Trevor Project, we train many different departments and school systems that are housing not only counselors, but usually school therapists and school nurses and so forth. And to really think about how this has transformed, or the work that still needs to be done with transforming what it means to go to a school counselor for youth is really important. So a lot of the times over the years, school counselors haven't been this thing necessarily to come and talk to about my feelings for
Right.
students. It's been mostly focused on in many educational systems as a place where it helps you career path or find your
Sure.
way to college, or
Even
you
just
know,
building your class schedule sometimes.
building your class schedule
Yeah.
and those things like that has never really been connected to this sense of connecting with my emotions and helping me also guide me through how to develop as a person as I'm engaging my emotions as well. And I think a lot of real transformation needs to go into how that is formulated and presented back to students as, hey, come and talk to me, because it historically hasn't necessarily been that way. And then also paying attention to when we look at school systems, most of the teachers or the staff that is a part of school systems have been there for a very long time. They've been teaching for years, they've been a counselor for years, and all of these different things. And it oftentimes puts them in a place where they are not getting the knowledge that is updating at the rate of what's really happening with students in society as it's moving forward. And so it is up to the counselors and the staff to make sure that they're educating themselves fully on how language is changing. You can't talk to someone if you're not sure how to communicate with them. And that's where our ally trainings come in. We specifically do our ally trainings to focus on giving a snapshot into the lived experience of LGBTQ youth, while also being able to take from that and make practical what it would look like for your school or your domain to be in allyship with the LGBTQ community. And so that goes through common language. We talk about the ways language has changed. We talk about pronouns, we talk about gender identity and so forth, and gender expression, but we also talk about the misconceptions around the LGBTQ community as well. And I think it's important counselors are making sure that they are getting their education and information from resources that are also enlightened and fighting against this propaganda that is really happening in the country, but around the world in general, about how people perceive LGBTQIA individuals, and making sure they're undoing those biases
Yep.
as they are learning and educating themselves. So in that ally training, we also cover microaggressions and biases and how that integrates and informs a lot of our interpersonal connections and relationships. And then on the other side of that, knowing that we are here, and there is an emphasis now on counseling as a way to help with mental health in school districts. We also offer a training called the CARE training, which is also a training that really actually focuses on crisis prevention and intervention and how to respond when someone is in crises. And so focusing on how to risk detection, right? How do I make sure I'm paying attention to these things, the warning signs? I know how to respond. I'm taking the necessary steps to learn more about how I can best help in those situations, while also, again, leaving the autonomy in the hands of the youth as someone who is also helping themselves along get through these tough situations. And so we are developing out even more trainings right now, centered on focusing on education and school systems, K through 12 specifically. And it is just overwhelmingly, I can't say how important it is for our counseling staffs and anyone who is supposed to render emotional care, emotional and mental care to the youth, to make sure that they are prepared by educating themselves.
Fantastic. So the the allied training, the care training. Did I get those names right?
Yeah.
How are they offered? How do people access them?
Yeah. You can definitely, we do a quarterly allied training that is available for individuals that are not connected to a specific entity that would love to be trained can get involved with as reaching out to the Trevor Project, education at the trevorproject.org specifically, but to inquire about those trainings. And you can also get them virtually. They are provided virtually or in person as well. And again, they are pathways to formulating relationship with the Trevor Project on getting more specific in what programming can look like for another organization working in connection with our organization.
That's wonderful. I love that there's both virtual and in person. Yeah, I hope and trust that a lot of the different youth serving organizations tuning into this conversation will look into those resources more.
Oh,
I want to point to important finding from your research. You all found that LGBTQ youth who felt high social support from their family reported attempting suicide at less than half the rate of those who felt low or moderate social support. So, can you unpack this finding a bit? I first am wondering if you can just define what is high social support and how does that differ from low or moderate social support, as
yeah.
well as what are some ways that families and trusted adults can offer high social support for the LGBTQ youth in their own circles.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we think about high social support and low social support and the difference between those two things, that high social support is not only getting that support from the infrastructure of your home, but that infrastructure extends into other places. And so when you are at school, you are part of organizations, you may be on sports teams, people know your name, right? People are around and are identifying you in different ways and are approaching you to engage in different ways, and that's not everybody's high school experience. And it is on the low end also having not that same social support at home, not having that same infrastructure at home, or maybe there is some infrastructure at home, but when you go to school you're not able to make those same connections that you may see everyone else having around you thriving, because either internally you're feeling different and are working through how to communicate beyond that, or and also working through the bias of people and people treating you different also. And so when we think about that statistic, and we I love hearing that statistic, and also the other statistic of having one accepting adult in LGBTQ's lives can lower their risk for suicide by 40%. These two things are so important because community is important. Community is the one way that anything happens. I'm a community organizer with affiliated with the movement for Black Lives, and to understand that anything that is moving can't occur without something else that is moving, right? So our ability to thrive in whatever we want to thrive in takes some form of community. And when you are in spaces where that social support is low, it is oftentimes because of the absence of a certain sort of community that is helping you propel in those same ways. And so when I see the difference, it's really what someone's community is looking like, and it is important that when we are dissecting, talking about, this person has more support or this person has less support, that we understand nuance goes into that also. It's very real, that nuance of that goes into that, especially when we're talking about LGBTQ youth. If they are having issues with support at home and their familiar structure, And they are coming to a place where they're trying to identify their own identity. And then once they identify their own identity, those same pieces that they utilize to build that identity is now being at risk or at harm or maybe falling away. And what kind of space mentally that really can put someone in when it comes to really thriving and really dealing with suicidal ideations or crises in general. Yeah, so if we move on to talking about the way that parents and leaders can build a different level of trust and how those things can happen. I think we talk about really, again, listening to youth in a much different way that our society has listened to them
Yeah.
over the years. And again, that has been from really, I'm going to remove your autonomy because I know more. I've done this before. And we really got to get out of the habit as adults as trying to raise or develop children to be like us as individuals. Kind of move that out of the way and say this is a whole person who is literally the spark in their eye. They're going to take on the world, and you have to be willing and ready to facilitate that, even if it doesn't show up the same way that you may have lived your own personal life, or the standard that you may said this is what it is for myself. And also getting involved. We know that studies tell us that parents that are more involved in school, they really see a difference in their engagement with their children or their kids. And so get involved, get to your schools, get and make sure that if they don't see support in the school system, that you're that first line of defense and support at the school system. So now the school system knows how to react, and that kid doesn't have to advocate for themselves all the time. And that's why parental presence is so important in those spaces.
Oh, I love the way you're able to connect family systems to school systems, since we're talking a bit about both. I'm wondering about the pandemic, and as we're kind of still navigating our way. Are we post-pandemic? Are we still in the pandemic?
Right.
Overall, what has the Trevor Project been hearing from young LGBTQ plus people during, through, after the pandemic? And are there certain recommendations you have for trusted adults to best support LGBTQ plus people, young people, in this new world we're in now?
Yeah. So we have heard, some very, disheartening things during the pandemic. You're right. Are we in it? Are we out of it? Even that confusion that adds to, the experiences that people are having. But we've heard a lot of stories and heard a lot of voices from our youth, and our youth telling us, during the pandemic, some of them had to live with, their abusers. Some people had to live with people who don't support them. There was not a lot of options, but to accept a lot of harm for a lot of people, and a lot of LGBTQ youth. And so, on the other side of, the pandemic, I'd like to say the pandemic really, it offered us as humanity an opportunity. It really offered us an opportunity to realize how much we are all on the same page, that we're all in this same thing, fighting, living, and existing together, because the entire world stopped. The entire world stopped. I mean, Trevor Project didn't stop, but the entire world stopped, and we were able to really see that a lot of us are not different. And I think that is gotta translate even among or beyond ageism and those different things that happen, that we are all human and having an experience. And I would say for adults moving forward, that getting more connected emotionally, because we were able to see just how much of a mental health pandemic that our country is in.
Yes.
This COVID-19 really showed us that in another way. And so I would say to pay attention to that, pay attention to the fact that it is very real that suicide, even though it's uncomfortable to talk about, we shy away from having those conversations. There are very real things, and that you should be implementing conversations around mental health and actively asking, how are you feeling today? Actively asking the things that extend beyond what we can produce as people, and focusing on really getting in and asking those questions to get back to connection in a much deeper way. So that would be my that would be my advice.
That is a great last word, just to be in touch with your own emotional experience so that you can be attuned to the emotional experience and the mental well-being of the young people that you serve. I think that's a great final last word.
Yeah.
Where can people, you've mentioned a bit throughout the conversation, but where can people tune in to keep following the work of Trevor Project?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on all social media platforms, you can find us, the Trevor Project or Trevor Project, um, and also make sure that you head over to the trevorproject.org to constantly find out what we have going on, to sign up for our newsletters, to figure out how you can get involved, how you can volunteer. All of those things can be done at the trevorproject.org. Again, the research, to find out more research, you can put the trevorproject.org/research. To take a look at our resources, you can put the trevorproject.org/resources, but you'll find everything that you need in that place. And yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, for Springtide's series on mental health and Gen Z, you can find all of that on springtideresearch.org with, the educators report that I've referenced today. It's available digitally or in print form, but we have a ton of resources we're constantly building to really make sure that all different youth serving organizations and trusted adults feel like they really can create more mental health positive environments for the young people they serve. So find those on social media. You can find Springtide at We Are Springtide across all different social media platforms. And we're so thankful, Penelope, that you could make time for this really important conversation today. Thank you for what you and your colleagues do at the Trevor Project. It is literally life-saving work. So we're grateful to be in community and conversation with you, and for the impact you're having. We can't say thank you enough.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. And if I leave anything with you all, it's world change relies on our capacity to care. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.